Hi, I'm Ondrej, and I'm glad to be here. You might know bind. So who uses bind? Who loves bind? Who hates bind? Who has love-hate relationship with bind? Okay, so my goal at ISC is to make, well, you move more to the I Love Bind group, so I hope to achieve that in upcoming years. So, you know, the Bind 9 was released in 2000, so that's a quite long time ago. It's 19 years, and it was written from scratch, and it deployed some nice technique by the time it was written. The reason why it crashes so often is that it uses something called design by contract, which is actually quite nice, because even though it's not nice to crash, it's much better than to have remote code execution. And it was also the first DNS server to have DNSSEC implementation, so there were some design decisions made back then that maybe doesn't make sense to you now, but it made sense there back there. So more recent history, that's Bind 9.11 ESV. The ESV means Extended Support Version, which means we support that version for at least 4 years. So it was released in 2016, and the big change, not the code change, but the license change, was that it changed license from ISC license to Mozilla Public License, which is more strict in terms of what you can do if you distribute it, modify sources. And it has a couple of new features like catalog zones for provisioning, add zone, del zone commands for RNDC. It has a Python tool called DNSSEC Key Manager that can manage your DNSSEC keys, rotate them, change the keys, all the fancy stuff you want to do with DNSSEC. And the other thing related to DNSSEC is negative trust anchors. I believe we all heard about the companies not signing or forgetting to sign their zones, and then you usually want to put them into NTAs, so you don't get that many calls from the customers as an ISP. It also has a DNS tab support to provide better facilities how to look at your DNSSEC traffic. Also support for DNS cookies, which is a way how to prevent being starved out of resources or if you are under attack, and minimum responses to any, again, reducing the traffic from your name servers. Bind 9.12 was released just last year, and again, it's packed with features. So NSEC regressive use, this is something that can benefit even the people not caring about security, because you can use the NSEC records to pinpoint where there are no records, and you can answer directly from cache even if you haven't asked for the answer before. Search tail, that's a feature that has been added and sponsored by Akamai after the last, I think that was after the Dyn Oracle has been attacked and disappeared from the internet for a while. So it's basically TTL stretching. So if no upstream servers, after the servers are reachable, the record can stay in cache for a little bit longer, and again, the customers are happier. We also did a major refactoring in the biggest, meanest function. There's actually a nice presentation from my colleague Evan Hunt, which was given at the DNS.org in San Jose. And this allowed speed up factor from 1.25 to 6, depending on the scenario. We have tools to manage CDS, CDNS records, which were contributed by Tony Finch. Also ED 25519 support if OpenSSL supports the algorithm. And it's been obsoleted by Bind 9.14, which has been released just a couple of weeks ago on a new release schedule that's more predictable. So I'll speak about that later. Again, we did a lot of refactoring and modernization on the code. And I just disabled my screen here. And a couple of new features. QNAME Minimization, which is DNS privacy feature, was sponsored by, and now I forgot the name. I'm sorry to the organization. Anyway, I'll speak about the QNAME minimization later. Also, mirror zone, which is for the root zone, so you can have your own copy of the root zone locally to reduce the traffic to the root zone system, a feature sponsored by ICANN. And one feature that doesn't seem so big because we only have one plugin at the moment, but Bind 9 has a generic query response processing plugins, and we are going to convert more stuff from the core Bind to modules in future releases. So, what modernization means on Unix, Bind now requires C99 support from compiler. It's actually true for Windows as well. It requires POSIX or Windows threads, advanced socket API for IPv6, and standard atomic, or at least the GCC built-ins, which is from GCC 4.8. This also means that we dropped support for a lot of old systems. So basically, the systems are no longer supported by the vendors or no longer produced at all. We also did a crypto refactoring. I think that Brett was picking up with the PKCS 11 and HSMs, and I think he would be much happier now. So what we did now, we made OpenSSL mandatory, and it's been used for everything that's non-public key crypto. That means hashing, HMAX, random number generation. So PKCS 11 is now only used for generating the keys for DNSSEC and maintaining them. We also did performance improvements. Task manager and the socket code is now multi-threaded, which wasn't the case before, which allowed us to have more than 100K or more query response per second improvement. I'm sorry, this is probably the old presentation. I fixed that in new version, but this wasn't uploaded. Basically, this is Bind 9.11, this is 9.12, and this is 9.14. So it goes up and right. So that's the right direction. If you can open the presentation that's in Indico, it has a better graph. What's QNAME minimization? Who knows what QNAME minimization is? Oh, okay. A couple of hands. So it basically improves DNS privacy, and well, DNS itself isn't very private, right? Because all the records are in the public. But that doesn't mean that the transactions that happen in DNS doesn't have to be. So so the change that QNAME minimization does is that its resolver sends only minimal amount of information that the authoritative server needs to know to give it the correct answer, and it's enabled by default in relax mode, which is, well, there's like setting off relax and strict, but the relax mode can fall back to previous settings if something weird happen in DNS. So so this is the old normal DNS traffic. So as you can see, like if you have a resolver here and you ask for www.isc.org, it goes to the root zone, .org servers, .isc.org servers. At every level, it sends the whole QNAME, the query name. So the change that QNAME minimization does is that for the root zone, it just asks for the org name servers. For the org zone name servers, it just asks for the isc.org, and so on and so on. So it sends a minimum information that it needs to resolve the name, not the whole information, which causes some problem with some CDNs or load balancers that just ignores the DNS specification, does their own thing. What's the root zone local copy? That's the mirror zones, as we call them in bind. It reduces traffic to the root zone system by transferring the root zone locally, and it keeps a copy of the root zone locally in the bind instance, but it's not accessible from the outside for the users, but it's just used internally for the resolver. The zone is DNSSEC validated, so you can trust that the zone you have is valid. So for bind 9.15 plans, that's the development release we are going to develop this year. There are 4 main areas we want to focus. It's the performance management of the bind instances, security and privacy, and operations. So for the performance, well, the goal is that we want to improve the bind performance to a level that you just don't have to care about it. Because right now the bind is quite underperforming compared to some other DNS servers, for which of some of those I'm responsible also for. So the goal for this year is to rewrite the whole networking stack we have in bind. Again, this was written in 2000. So the most probable way of doing that, we are going to use an external library called libuv, which is the asynchronous library, like event loop based, and it can use all the good mechanisms of the operating system. So that would be EPOL on Linux, KQ on FreeBSD, IOCP on Windows. And it could do all the fancy stuff that you usually want in network daemon, like thread pool, signal handling. And the whole exercise is that, the libuv is really well performing in these scenarios. And like moving all the networking stack to external library will allow us to focus on what's important, and that's DNS, not the networking stack. We want to focus on the DNS and be good at DNS. For the management, there are 2 areas. We would like to update the catalog zones to a new specification. And also, there's like metrics, statistics, counters, whatever we call them in bind. And there's actually something we would like to hear from you users, the bind users, if there's something missing or if there's something extra, because there's too many counters, but we actually don't know if they are useful to you at all. So if you have any feedback, feel free to contact us about the counters that are in bind currently, and if you are missing something, or if you think that nobody should use that. So let us hear you. For the security, you've heard about the DOE. There's also the DNS over TLS, which we would like to extend the bind to have support for DNS over TLS. It's running on different port, and it would be also a good example how to add a new new transport layer to bind, because there might be DNS over quick in the future, or maybe something else. So we want bind to be extensible much more quickly. So this is again use case where we can extend bind to support DNS over TLS natively, which means also supporting clients, because you probably use DIC as a debugging tool, so you probably want to use it for DNS over TLS as well. Named could be also client working in forwarder mode, and also supporting server. For DNS over HTTP, so fortunately I don't have to talk about the controversies in the protocol, and I pretty much agree with what has been said here. The thing is that we would like to add DOE support in bind, or our plan is to add a proxy module to popular web servers so we don't have to implement it directly in bind. Just add a thin support between the module in the web server and the bind. But our goal is to give you an option, because if we just ignore DO and like cover our ears and pretend it's not happening, we might cease to exist, because everybody would be using Cloudflare, Google, or any other big DNS silo, and we want to prevent this. So we are going to add support for DO in bind, not because we think it's a particularly good idea to tunnel DNS traffic through HTTP, but because we support open internet and we want to give users and network operators option to use bind instead of one of the big guys. So for DNSSEC, again, security. So there's a presentation from my colleague at ISC, DNSSEC in 6 minutes. I would like to reduce it to 6 seconds to just writing simple yes. Yes, sign my zones. Yes, please do everything you need to do for DNSSEC. I don't want to care. So we are going to change bind that it picks reasonable defaults for keys. We'll probably implement the key and signing policy, the CASP, inside named, and we want to automate everything: the key creation, key rotation, child-to-parent communication using the CDS, CDNS key records, if supported by the registry, and also periodic signing. So all you will have to do in the future is to say, yes, please make my zones DNSSEC signed, and I don't really care how, but do that. On the other hand, we also want to add support for more niche configuration, like offline case. If you have them on HSM, or you have the laptop that has the keys, but they are offline normally, the signing should not cease to shouldn't fail to sign your zones, and other stuff like combined signing keys, because for many of the domains, one key is just enough, especially if you have the automation that allows you to rotate a key frequently. This is the new release schedule. Again, I'm sorry for the picture that just went off. So we are here. We just released 9.14. So basically, the new release schedule is that that all the odd numbers are the development releases, and the even numbers are the stable releases. And every 2 years we are going to release extended support version with some overlap for you to have a chance to upgrade. And we are also trying to do with the new release. We are trying to do a time-based releases, so to be more predictable. So there will be a new patch release every month, at least from the beginning. So, but a maximum at month. Of course, if there's nothing, then we are probably not going to do release just for a release. But there's always something. There's always some little bug that creeped in. But basically, we will say a date, something like, I don't know, 3rd Tuesday of a month, and there will be a release, so you can prepare for it. Any questions? Did I
Thank
bore
you,
you to death?
Thank you, Ondrej. That was good. It seems every time I see a presentation about bind, you've improved the performance, which is good. But every time I ask the question, does that include delegation-centric zones, I usually get no. So I was wondering if it did include delegation-centric zones, and or you have any plans to improve performance for us.
Well, that's actually one of the columns here. Is a delegation-centric. So one of them is 1 million delegations. But if you look at the Indico presentation inside, that
okay,
it's much more like it has,
And in your future
Yes,
plans,
please.
do you expect that acceleration to continue with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I do expect to be in the same league as other
Okay.
servers I've been involved with.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ondrej? Okay, thank you, Ondrej.